Hello everyone and welcome back to our series on the Hebrew Revelation, James and Jude. This is session number 6. Why would Yahweh make humans drink blood? I'm referring, of course, to the third bowl of wrath that we read about in the book of Revelation, where the water is turned into blood. And this never made any sense to me until I read this in the Hebrew version of Revelation. But let's first start with a quote. Remember what most scholars teach about the New Testament? Most scholars, pastors, and Bible teachers claim the Greek New Testament is the New Testament. All else is translation. Jesus speaks to us out of every page of the Greek. Is this really true? The answer is no. This is not true. The Greek New Testament is not always the original and all else a translation. In fact, in the previous video in this series, we discussed multiple examples of linguistic mistranslation in the Greek text of Revelation. In other words, we looked at multiple examples where we can clearly show from a linguistic perspective that the Hebrew revelation preserved the original text and vocabulary, whereas the Greek version of Revelation preserves a second-hand translation of the text, including some mistakes in which the Greek translator misread or misunderstood the original Hebrew text. But today and in the next few sessions, I don't want us to focus on linguistic differences. Rather, I want us to study examples where the Greek revelation does not make sense or even contradicts itself, and the Hebrew revelation makes perfect sense. So, let's start with this question. Why do the wicked people in the end times deserve to drink blood? Let's read from Revelation 16 verse 6. When translated from Greek, it says, "For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink. It is what they deserve." This is supposed to make sense. Does it make sense to you? The wicked people shed blood, and therefore they deserve to drink blood? This never made any sense to me, because if I think of the Old Testament, I remember that verse saying that whosoever sheds the blood of a man, by man his blood will be shed. So to me that would sound fair or just or what they deserve. Why do they deserve to drink blood? Where's the connection between shedding and drinking blood? Let's start by looking at some Greek-based commentaries on the Greek text of Revelation and see if there is any insight that we can gain from the Greek text of Revelation or not. This is just a very general comment saying, "The angel of the waters praises God for this judgment and explains that it is a fair one. The people of the earth have shed blood, so they must drink blood." Well, that is exactly what the Greek revelation says, but I still cannot see any connection between shedding and drinking blood. I don't understand why this is supposed to be a fair judgment. Let's have a look at another commentary. This time they try to explain the logic based on Greek words used in the Greek text of Revelation. This commentary says, "The judgment came because they have poured out the blood." This is another example of the law of retribution. The verb in Greek is the same as that describing the angels pouring out the bowls and heightens the sense of divine justice. Now, this sounds very interesting because they say that in Greek the same verb is used for pouring out blood and pouring out the bowls of wrath on the wicked people. The problem is this: all 7 bowls of wrath are poured out on the wicked people, but only the 3rd bowl turns the water into blood. And only when the water is turned into blood and the people have to drink blood, only then is this compared to the shedding of blood. Let's go back to this verse in Revelation. Just are you, O Holy One, for they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink. It is what they deserve. Yes, true and just are your judgments. You see, it does not say because they poured out blood, the bowls of wrath are poured out on them. No, it says because they poured out or shed blood, therefore they deserve to drink blood. And this is supposed to be obvious. The angels in heaven praise Elohim for this judgment and say, it's just, it's righteous, it's what these wicked people deserve. This is supposed to be obvious, and I can't even understand this. If we cannot even understand something so basic that's supposed to be obvious, how will we understand the more difficult things in the book of Revelation? Let's have a look at one more Greek-based commentary, the New International Greek Testament Commentary. The author goes through a long discussion to try to prove that the water is not really turned into blood, as it says in Revelation. And then he summarizes, the last clause of the verse thus emphasizes the justice of divine punishment. The persecutors have poured out the blood of saints and consequently deserve to have their own blood poured out. Now, of course, that sounds very fair. It sounds very just. But it's not what the Greek Revelation says. If you read the context in Revelation chapter 16, it says this bowl is poured out on the fountains of water. The water is turned into blood and these people have to drink blood. It doesn't say pour out, pour out. So, the bottom line is this. The Greek-based commentaries don't have a solution. Experts in the Greek New Testament cannot explain to us what is the logic behind this verse, what is the link, what is the connection between shedding blood and drinking blood. There's no connection in the Greek text, and it doesn't make sense. Now, let's move over to the Hebrew text of Revelation. Maybe the Hebrew version of Revelation preserved the link. So here is Revelation 16 verse 6, when translated from Hebrew, from the 00.1.16 manuscript that we also discussed in earlier sessions in this series. See if you can spot the difference. It says, for they have shed the blood of the set-apart ones and the prophets like waters, and you gave them blood to drink, for they are worthy of this. When I read this for the first time, I was so amazed because for the first time ever, it made sense. Let's add some highlighting so you can see the difference. For they have shed the blood of the set-apart ones and the prophets like waters. Like waters. Water is what we drink every day. Everyone drinks water or else they die. Even though some people say they never drink water, the fact that they are still alive means they are consuming enough water in their food and drinks to stay alive, because if you don't drink water, you die. So now we see the connection. They shed blood like waters, which is what we drink every day, and Yahweh gave them blood to drink instead of water. The water is turned into blood, for they are worthy of this. Now, we also need to remember how Hebrew gapping works. Gapping means that usually something will be stated explicitly in the first of two parallel phrases, and then implied again in the second one of these two phrases without being written. So the fact that it says here, they shed blood like waters, and you gave them blood to drink like waters, is implied there a second time in the second phrase. So because they shed blood like water, they get blood to drink like water instead of water, because the water is turned into blood. And now all of a sudden it makes sense. We can see the link and the connection between these two things. Now, let's also have a look at this in the Hebrew manuscript, so that you can see I did not make this up. And let's zoom in on that first phrase so we can see it more clearly. It says, Ki hema shavchu demei hakedoshim, for they have shed the blood of the set apart ones. And now moving on to the next line. Wehanevi'im, and the prophets, kamayim, like waters, like waters. Wa'ata natata lahem dam lishtot, and you gave them blood to drink. Now remember, like waters is again implied here in the Hebrew way of thinking. Ki hema re'uyim lazeh, for they are worthy of this. One little word in Hebrew, kamayim. Because the Greek translation missed this one word in the Hebrew text, it no longer makes sense in Greek. In Hebrew, kamayim, like waters, is one little word. And even though we know that translators would generally expand and explain the text while translating, we also know out of hard experience that translators will here and there miss a little word in the Hebrew text. That's why it is so important to have more than one person check a translation, because otherwise, here and there, a little word will be missed. And sometimes it does not make a big difference, sometimes it does make a very big difference. Because this one word was preserved in the Hebrew text, it makes sense. Now that we understand the logic behind this coming punishment, it reminds me of something in the Old Testament. Can you think what it is? Remember what happened to the Israelites in Egypt? Pharaoh commanded his people to cast the babies into the Nile. And remember that in Hebrew, murder is very often called bloodshed. Regardless of whether the blood literally was poured out of someone, it's called bloodshed. So, the Egyptians treated Yahweh's people's blood like water. They cast the babies into the Nile. The Nile is full of water. The Nile is the main source of water in Egypt. And they despised Yahweh's people and imagined that their blood was as worthless as water or as cheap as water, and they cast them into the Nile. What happened with the first plague that Yahweh sent to Egypt? Yahweh turned the Nile into blood, and all their drinking water was turned into blood. And Yahweh gave them blood to drink because they deserved it. It's exactly what they deserved. It makes sense. Now, one thing that we need to realize is this was not the final punishment of the Egyptians. This was just a wake-up call to get them to repent. The final punishment of the wicked people is that they will be cast into Gehinnom if they do not repent. But this punishment that came on the Egyptians was to wake them up and to show them that blood and water is not the same. It's a call for people to repent of bloodshed, and the same in the Revelation, in the Hebrew Revelation. This is not a very pleasant prophecy to think about, because it says here that the wicked people shed the blood of Yahweh's set-apart ones and prophets like water. In the end times, Yahweh's people will be persecuted and killed, and the wicked people will despise them and regard their blood as cheap as water. And then this punishment of the third bowl of wrath is not the final punishment for the wicked people. It's a wake-up call. Because they shed blood like waters, Yahweh will give them blood to drink like waters, to give them another chance to repent. And now, because we read this when translated from Hebrew, we can see the link. It makes sense, doesn't it? Now remember this quote. Scholars claim the Greek New Testament is the New Testament. All else is translation. Jesus speaks to us out of every page of the Greek. Is this true? No, it's not true. And please don't misunderstand me. I'm not against the Greek New Testament. We believe that the Bible should be translated into all languages on earth. The problem is, if we take one of these second-hand translations with its mistakes and say this is the original text, it only causes confusion. It only causes confusion. And we really need to get back to the original Hebrew text of the book of Revelation if we want to understand these prophecies given in the book of Revelation. When translated from Greek, I never understood this verse for years. It never made any sense to me. Now it makes sense. Because they shed blood like waters, they will get blood to drink. The water is turned into blood, and they get blood to drink like waters. So, let's sum this up. The Greek revelation fails to show the link between shedding blood and drinking blood. Experts in the Greek New Testament are confused, and they don't understand the logic behind Revelation 16 verse 6, even though this is supposed to be obvious. The Hebrew revelation, however, preserved the link. They shed blood like waters, and Yahweh gives them blood to drink like waters. The book of Revelation does make sense. We simply need to read this in the original Hebrew and in light of the Hebrew Old Testament. I hope you found this interesting. Next time, we want to cover another contradiction in the Greek revelation. Censor or alter. Confusion in the Greek revelation. Until next time, Shalom in Yeshua Mashiach.